Thinking about guns, I started writing this column that I do for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, the aldef.org/blog. And I was just picking up on the killing of an Asian American teenager last week. Happened on Wednesday, and it was adjacent to a school. He was during school hours. He should have been in class, but he wasn't. We're talking about a young man named Tai Kin. And what bothers me about him is that it's a story locally in Stockton, but we all should be thinking about this. If you're Asian American, even if you're not Asian American. But here was this 17-year-old, innocent. I mean, he was playing basketball. He should have been in class. But he was playing with a buddy who had a gold chain, and someone comes up to rob his buddy. His buddy gets pistol whipped. This 17-year-old Tai Kin goes, comes to help his friend and gets a bullet that kills him. The perp uses a gun, shoots and kills Tai Kin, 17 years old. This happens in broad daylight out in Stockton, California, last Wednesday. And, if you're not in Stockton, California, you're not going to hear about this case. You may not even hear about it if you're in Stockton. As an Asian American, I'm appalled by this. I mean, this is an innocent kid, 17 years old. And you can go to GoFundMe to help out his family because he's a 17-year-old who doesn't have a future, but he has a GoFundMe page. That is a ridiculous state of being in Asian America. But I mean, people talk about, the model minority, this and that. And here's a kid who comes from a tough background, but from all indications, he was, cheery, joking around. His family knew him as a, good-humored guy. He didn't deserve to die at age 17 to a perp with a gun who was trying to rip off his friend for his gold chain. And so I'm thinking about this guy all weekend, Tai Kin. He dies on Wednesday. There's a little memorial on Thursday. Hardly anything. I mean, no real. It doesn't even make the news. Why? It's a single event shooting. When you're a single victim incident, you don't get the kind of news like a mass shooting. America's into mass shootings, right? And so Tai Kin just becomes a statistic in the gun violence archive. I mean, check out the link on my column, aldef.org/blog, and you can go to his link. And it's just sad. I waited to hear back from the family, but I wanted to write about him because an Asian American dying from a gunshot wound shouldn't be considered normal in America. And also because Kin's kind of shooting death, this single incident, single individual event, shouldn't be greeted with a relative degree of silence. But that's what happens. But when an Asian American teenager is shot and killed, we all should notice. Not just you listeners to Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable, my micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs, but all of America should pay attention to this. Yet, look, we got victims in Louisville. How many of them can we recall a week later at the old, at the bank there? For that matter, how many victims do we remember from the Uvalde school or the Nashville Covenant School on March 27th that claimed 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults? I mean, I can remember some faces from the news coverage, but Do you recall any of these victims? In America, there are either too many or not enough. America has a short attention span. And of course, the media's preference is to cover the mass shootings in America. The mass shootings, they're the newsworthy ones. And even the mass shootings, as I pointed out, quickly become genericized. Oh, yeah, a big shooting, more than 4 over there. Uvalde, oh, a lot more than 4. Oh, in Louisville. Oh, in Nashville. Oh, and then I checked out, and then I wrote my column, I submitted it, and then, of course, we had more mass shootings over the weekend. I mean, almost a safe bet that, Monday, if you think it's a slow news day, find out how many people died at the hands of a gun and how many of those were mass shootings. And, of course, we had some mass shootings. We had this terrible mass shooting in Alabama that I didn't really discover until like a couple hours after I wrote my column. We had 4 victims who were at a Sweet 16 party in Dadeville, Alabama. 4 dead, 28 injured. 15 teenagers. I mean, this is why, right? I mean, there's some kids with real promise who were like athletes, high school football star. 4 dead, 28 injured. Joe Biden said, "What has our nation come to when children cannot attend a birthday party without fear?" Okay, birthday party, one thing. How about school? How about work? How about... It's the same old, right? And when I thought about Takeout, his death in Stockton that hardly anyone knows about, I thought about it over the weekend, went to the gun violence archive. They usually show the deaths within the last 72 hours. And Kin was listed as the 76th death between April 11th and April 14th, when I counted 395 people injured, 104 deaths. And isn't it funny? We almost stopped counting after Louisville on Monday, right? Last Monday, the Louisville mass shooting occurred. And that's where all the news coverage was focused on. Takeout, a single death in Stockton, California. No one covered that. Stockton media, what little of it exists, they covered it. But yet, between April 11th, that Monday, and April 14th, 104 gun deaths. If it all happened in one single event, maybe people would have taken notice and forced legislators to take action. But you spread out those 104 gun deaths in 72 hours. 104 deaths sound few alarms in America. Which is my point, that unless it's a high-powered AR-15 style weapon involved, unless a lot of people die, more than 4, the mass shootings. A simple handgun, a solo victim, a single victim, you're not going to see much coverage. You're not going to see many people take note. Why? Because that kind of violence has become normalized. And I'm also afraid now that even the mass shootings have become normalized. They all just start rolling together. And as I pointed out a second ago, how many people recall victims from Uvalde? Maybe you remember a face from a picture that was on television, but how many remember? Uvalde. How about in the Southern California shootings not too long ago? And the Northern California shootings later, which involved Asian Americans, by the way. They just seem to blend all together, and we're not paying attention. And things become really normalized. And so, of course, some people say, look, let's ban assault weapons, but that's not the problem, and shouldn't be the sole remedy to ban the assault weapons or ban the gun. Can't ban the gun. The Second Amendment is there, but we should be focusing on America's love of violence. The gun is just a tool. And even in that highly publicized murder case in San Francisco of tech executive Bob Lee, it wasn't a gun that was used, it was a knife. So if the problem that we have as a society is that we can't get past the gun lobby to pass tougher laws, why don't we just bypass the gun lobby by not just focusing on the gun, but by talking about the violence that exists? Where does the violence come from? Why do we find ourselves so quick to move to violence? I mean, that's complicated. I don't know how you can legislate anything. Maybe force people to take public meditation, or maybe public mediation classes. Yeah, meditation and mediation. That would help. But something needs to be done, and we ought to get to the root cause. It's not background checks, red flag laws, any of that. Those aren't root causes. Those are ways in which we restrict guns, which could be helpful, but it's not going to solve the problem of why are we quick to move to violence. So I don't know where that leaves us, except we'll have legislators calling for assault weapons bans and some controls on different, things that make regular guns into essentially semi-automatic weapons, bump stocks. You have people calling for red flag laws, which, yeah, we need those. But until we start thinking about how to get to the core issue of our society's love affair of violence, until we get to that, we're not going to solve anything. So I think also, I looked at the single victim events in the gun violence archive. I was surprised in that April 11th to April 14th period, where Takeout was number 76, there were 104 deaths. 104 deaths in 72 hours. What if, you could say, well, if there were no guns, that might have curtailed, any of those occurrences, but maybe people would have used knives. But I think if we want to solve the question, what got us to the point where we have to talk about a person reaches for a gun and shoots another, as opposed to a person goes up to the other person and talks to them? If a lot of these are situations that come out of arguments between people, they're not just random violence. It's people are known. I bet you could take that 104 number that I got and you could pare it down at least, and then get the truly random types, which are just, but what caused those perps to turn to violence and to take out aggressions toward random people, as opposed to the people he really wanted to go after, he or she. Let's not be sexist. So Monday, what a terrible Monday. And just in terms of, I went into the weekend thinking about gun violence from last week, from Wednesday, and then the spillover Thursday, Friday. I come into Monday and I'm not even paying attention to, was there a mass shooting? Yes, there was a mass shooting. Alabama. And why? The perps are still on the loose. And, so is the perp involved in the shooting of Ty Kim in Stockton? He's been on the loose since Wednesday. And I would say chances are good unless someone steps forward and gives some kind of information. If they know something, this will be a case that goes from cold to colder. Because justice, I don't think anyone's thinking about justice for Ty Kim. I think that's a shame. You're 17 years old. Life ahead of you, and then your life cut short. You get a GoFundMe page to help your family pay for your funeral expenses. Go to my column on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's at aldef.org/blog, and then go to that column where I talk about Ty Kim, Kin, K-H-I-N. Ty, his first name. His mom called him Tai Tai. And there's a link there that'll take you to the GoFundMe page. So I was just thinking, I'm just going to talk about Ty Kim. That's all that we're going to have to talk about today because, gun violence has always been a key issue for me for as long as I can remember. As long as I got into public discourse through the radio, talk show hosts, all that, it's always been an issue, and it hasn't gotten better. Every time you think it's gotten, I was doing talk radio when the assault weapons ban was on. Here's the funny thing about the assault weapons ban. It was brought on in California because of the mass murder at the Cleveland school in Stockton, where the targets were young Southeast Asian American kids. Or they were the victims. They were the ones who mostly got shot at. The Cleveland school shooting. Patrick Purdy, the gunman, the mass shooter. So it's ironic. Here we are, 2023, Stockton, Ty Kim, shot. Not a mass shooting, just an individual perp, individual victim at large, free. And where's the justice for Ty Kim? Anyway, the GoFundMe page is on my ALDEF blog. Check it out, aaldef.org/blog. Go to the column on Ty Kim and see more on his GoFundMe page. So, all right, so we got Alabama, but there's this one other shooting that has bothered me, and that is the case involving Ralph Yarl in Kansas City, young black teenager. God, they're getting younger and they're teenagers. The victims are young people. That's a sad thing. So if you haven't heard about the Ralph Yarl case, he went to pick up a family member, his younger twin brothers who were playing at a friend's house on Thursday, mistakenly went to the wrong house a block away. And he went to the door and rang the doorbell of a house. And the resident there was an 80-year-old white male, according to reports, who, upon hearing the doorbell, shot Jarl once to the head, and then a second time, according to reports. The man who shot him was taken into custody. But, I'm maybe skipping over a couple things. Jarl, the 60-year-old, was shot in the head, downed, shot a second time, got up, went to a couple houses looking for help. No one would help him. Finally got someone to call the police. Thank goodness he didn't bleed out. Meanwhile, the man who shot Jarl was taken into custody, held for 24 hours, and then released with no charges because the case was under investigation. Now, this reminds me a lot about my cousin's shooting. He went to the wrong apartment. He was shot. In California, they have the California Penal Code 187, which is based on the foundation of, the castle doctrine. Your home is your castle, and if you have a fear that someone is intruding, you have the right to shoot. Missouri's law is a little different. It's more like a generic stand your ground, where I don't think it is as much based on fear, but it's more based on the general stand your ground rule, where you have a right to fire. And I think that's going to be an issue that will come up. But the lawyers for the Jarl family say there can be no excuse for the release of this armed and dangerous suspect after admitting to shooting an unarmed, non-threatening, and defenseless teenager that rang his doorbell. The lawyers are Ben Crump and Esselie Merritt. Ben Crump, from similar kind of civil rights type cases. So you got a guy who goes to the wrong house. He was actually a block away. And, they named these streets funny. He was supposed to go to Northeast 115th Terrace, and he went to Northeast 115th Street. Man, I have done something similar in, places like Washington, D.C. Try to figure out Washington, D.C. It's supposed to be all like gridded out, but you can be in the wrong place. Street instead of terrace. I'm just saying, the stand your ground law in Missouri apparently was adopted in 2016. The mayor of Kansas City said it shouldn't apply in this case. He's quoted in the New York Times. If stand your ground really lets somebody just shoot somebody that rings a doorbell, that puts the life of every postal worker, every campaigner, every Amazon delivery person at risk in this country. Well, no kidding. That is the problem with stand your ground. In California, it's even more specific because it says if you have a fear that there's an intruder coming in, you're justified in shooting. All right, that's the California law. Stand your ground laws are different everywhere, but it's all based on the castle doctrine. And this is the case of Ralph Yarl, 16, young African-American kid, went to the wrong house looking for his young twin brothers. He's going to pick them up. Rings the wrong doorbell, gets shot in the head. According to some late reports, he's been released, but this is a problem. You know, the white male who shot Ralph Yarl was released. They know where he is. He's not going anywhere. But he's 80 years old. I don't have much sympathy for him. You could have asked him, hey, what are you doing? But, I mean, basically we're talking about fear. You don't take a reaction like that, like shooting a young black kid in the head, if you don't have some fear. I don't know what solves that, except you need a better sense of community. You need better outreach in the community. You need better understanding. How do you get that? I don't know. I don't know how you legislate that. But this is America, 2023. All right, so we talked about the Yarl incident. We talked about the Alabama incident. We ought to talk about Akron while we're at it too, because, you know, it's one thing when it's civilians against civilians. It's quite another thing when it's the police against civilians. And just today, like I said, it's a busy Monday. In Akron, Ohio, grand jury there declined to indict 8 police officers in the death of Jalen Walker, a 25-year-old black man who was shot nearly 4 dozen times after a car chase last year. Now, we talked about this last year. I've done 503 of these shows. So, you know, Jalen Walker's name came up. I did talk about him a year ago, June 27th. I mean, there were weeks of protests in Akron last year. There's outrage across the country. And chances are there's going to be outrage now. I mean, they prepared that when they found out that the grand jury was going to come out and not indict, 8 police officers, 7 white, 1 black. They'd been placed on administrative leave. But by early November, all 8 had returned to their administrative duties. So you knew something was coming that was not going to be like gung-ho, let's go after these guys. But, we had a situation here where the police fired 90 rounds. They shot Jalen Walker about 60 times. That's how many, according to reports. How many rounds he took on. The NAACP president, Derek Johnson, said this wasn't self-defense. It wasn't an accident. In the heat of the moment, it was murder, point blank. That's what was said last summer. Now, I don't know what happened. Cooler heads prevailed, or did the ugly system that we have, prevail? Because grand jury not indicting the 8 police officers in the death of Jalen Walker. And this is, you're going to have to follow this one, because the reaction probably still is yet to come, because The news is just breaking within the last hour. All right, let's finish off with some Asian American news, and this is not insignificant. This is pretty serious. You have the FBI arresting 2 Chinese operatives for running an illegal police station in Manhattan, essentially run by the Chinese government. The Chinese government is setting up a local police station in Chinatown. Now, I've been to Chinatown in New York many times, but most recently within the last couple months. And I liked walking around China. Walked around with my friend. Can you imagine the Chinese government opening up a police station in a building in Chinatown that they use to spy on Americans, Chinese Americans here? And the people who set this up were Chinese American, I believe. Liu Jianwang, 61, Chen Jinping, 59, arrested. And this is just the beginning, right? The FBI arrested the men this morning. The charges were suspicion of running an illegal police station that was used to spy and harass dissidents, Chinese dissidents on U.S. soil. The reason we should be concerned, if you're Asian American, is because, that's sort of the go-to kind of scapegoating, or the go-to assumption. Oh, they're Chinese spies in academia, in our labs, and innocent Asian Americans pay the price for zealous action taken against scientists, professors. But now that there's a situation here with these 2 Chinese operatives actually running an illegal police station in Chinatown, don't think it's going to get better. But now people can say, look, there's spying going on. Well, we knew spying was going on. But these are Chinese Americans who, from this police station in Chinatown in San Francisco, or in New York, they're going to California, checking on dissidents. It's the long arm of China, the long arm of President Xi. And I think we are coming to a period. This is just the beginning if relations don't get much better between the U.S. and China. And you remember the balloon, remember this, remember TikTok. I think it's going to get worse. I mean, before we used to say, well, look, the accusations of spying are just, BS. We're dealing with real Americans who are scapegoated, stereotyped. But now we have examples. Real Asian Americans here in Chinatown in New York, arrested by the FBI. We'll see what happens. They are scheduled to be arraigned. They're set to appear at a Brooklyn federal court. But I don't see this as getting better before it gets worse. And when I was there in Chinatown or in New York City, talked to some people, I said, got the balloon. You got to worry a little bit about the backlash against innocent Chinese Americans. And people would tell me, yeah, that is always a situation to worry about. Now we have Now the FBI, who knows how emboldened they are now after these two arrests. Let's wait to hear the story from Liu Wang, 61 of the Bronx, Shen Jinping, 59 of Manhattan. What's going on with this Chinatown neighborhood local police station for China? And it's looked like it was a legal thing where you could set up, if you're a Chinese resident living here in America, you can set up things that you needed in China, which seems weird to me. Seems like you probably could have just had people go to the consulate, right? The embassy, Chinese embassy. Why they had to have a police station? But apparently also the police station was used as a front to spy on Chinese Americans living here who were dissidents. Bad development. We got to be watching it, see what happens. But it doesn't sound good. All right, so all this for a Monday. All this for a Monday. I thought, it was going to be easy. Watch the basketball game, Warriors and the Kings. That, to me, was probably one of the best playoff games. The Suns and Clippers, that was good because it looked like maybe the Suns would come back with Kevin Durant. But, man, Russell Westbrook, as maligned a player as what Russell Westbrook is, he's a dogged. He may miss shots, but he made a couple defensive plays that had the LA Clippers win. And I guess I'm glad that the LA Clippers won for the sake of a former classmate, Steve Ballmer. That doesn't mean we were in class together. We weren't in computer class trying to figure out Windows. No. We were in the class, the large, class of 1,100 people. So I'm not saying like he's a buddy and give me front row seats at a basketball game. But I'm happy that he won because I don't think he's going to go very far, not with this Clipper team. But Russell Westbrook did well. I think the best game in the NBA playoffs, as we begin them, was the Kings-Warriors game. And mostly because it showed people that the Kings are for real, unfortunately, and the Warriors are still kind of lackadaisical. They were lackadaisical on defense when they needed to be strong and tough. And maybe now they rise to the occasion and say, this is for real. We got to play seriously. And they get their championship chops back. But I don't know. The Warriors they're a just-in-time kind of team, They just don't want to exert themselves. They're getting older. They got some great players. I thought when Stephen Curry hit that jumper, and the jumper, fourth quarter, Klay Thompson has the ball, goes to the baseline, gets trapped, flings the ball to the opposite side of the court to Stephen Curry, who catches the ball, and then off the dribble, shoots it, and makes a three. I thought that was the beginning of the end where the Warriors would ultimately win. But on the next possession, the Warriors could not stop De'Aaron Fox, who pulls up and hits a three from the top of the key. And then the Warriors begin to fall apart. They miss shots. They don't play defense. They should have defended Aaron Fox on that three, but they didn't. And that's the small margin of error that the Warriors have. Champions that they are. They have a small margin of error. And the Sacramento Kings are too good. But being in Northern California, I'm kind of happy for the Kings in a way because the last time the Kings were relevant, I thought I was dying of pneumonia. That was a long time ago. But I remember being on my so-called deathbed watching the old Kings, right? The Chris Webber Kings and Vlade Divac and Peja Stojakovic and some good Kings teams. Couldn't get by the Lakers, though. They couldn't get by the Lakers. And now they're back, and I hope the Warriors take them seriously because they're a tough out. They play again tonight. Let's see what happens. All right, that's it for me today. I mean, I thought it was going to be, I'm going to talk about this guy who got shot and killed, this 17-year-old kid. My heart goes out for him, Kin, K-I-N-H, or K, not Kin. It's K-H-I-N, Kin. Go to my Aldef column at aldef.blog or aldef.org/blog. Cute guy. Got his big, glasses. He's not the perfect student, but his family said he lit up a room. He was smart. He was bright. He was funny. Always quick with a joke. Playing basketball when he maybe should have been in class. There's an attempted robbery of a friend's gold chain. Kin goes to help and gets shot. Dies. There's a GoFundMe page for Kim in my column. And I hope you consider helping out his family. All right. Regular listeners to the show know I like a little meditation. A little meditation goes a long way. That's the thing about gun violence. I said, what are you going to do if you because clearly going after the guns is kind of like is it a fool's errand? Not quite a fool's errand. It's just foolish because you're not really going after the real problem. So maybe public meditation, maybe giving people copies of Marshall Rosenberg's, nonviolent communication, maybe teaching people nonviolent communication, something would be more effective than going loggerheads with the gun lobby. Meditation, mediation, maybe better answers than tackling the gun lobby. All right, so thank you for listening. Check out our show on YouTube, youtube.com/Emil Amok1, EMIL AMOK1. Also on Emil Amok on Twitter. I know for how long, a lot of people I say, oh, you can listen to it on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK, and people say, So I don't know. You can also catch it on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Replays on amok.com. And of course, we're talking about this live podcast. I don't put it on the normal podcast places because I say, come see it here. It's a secret here. It's our own little thing. And once again, you regular listeners know I like to meditate. I mean, I don't say, okay, here, I'm going to meditate, and then we go off for like long periods of silence. I just say, meditate. Although I should start a meditation thing where we just sit. Could be helpful. Sitting and doing nothing is probably one of the best things I do. But, among the different techniques, it all boils down to love. Love for one another, love toward others. Oh, and then, of course, that leads to self-love. But you start with love toward others first, it comes back to you, and then voila. It works. So it boils down to the metta, METTA, the metta meditation, where you say some simple phrases and lean into the love. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. If you found us, go back to the beginning and catch the whole show. See it on amok.com or right where you are, just as the show repeats. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, Mahal Kita.